Evidence of a chemical reaction. If we could see the atoms and molecules, it would be easy to identify what a chemical reaction was. We would see that there are atoms that are combining with other atoms to form compounds. If we're starting with molecules, we would see that those come apart and new molecules are formed. That atoms in one molecule can change place with atoms in another. But we can't see this happening because they're too small. And so we have other ways to help us tell if there's been a chemical reaction. One of these is a color change. Now, these are listed as evidence. They do not prove that a chemical reaction has occurred, but they give us a clue that probably a chemical reaction has occurred. There's a picture of a temperature-sensitive spoon. These are great for feeding babies because then you don't accidentally feed them food that's too hot. You put the spoon in hot water and it changes color. There's a chemical reaction occurring when that happens. So if we see a color change. If we see formation of a solid, there wasn't a solid present before. Here we've got a clear yellow solution and a colorless solution, and we mix them together and we get this red cloudy stuff. This is cloudy because it's actually small particles, and if we let it sit, all these will settle to the bottom. This is a precipitate. It's a solid that wasn't there before. That's evidence of a chemical reaction. Formation of a gas. Plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Put Alka-Seltzer tablet in water and you see bubbles forming. The release of a gas is evidence of a chemical reaction. This is a substance that wasn't there before, and we can see the bubbling or the fizzing. Another evidence is heat absorption or emission or light emission. So here is a gas burner, and we see light coming out. Light is a form of energy. We also would observe heat. So heat being given off or light being given off is evidence of a chemical reaction. Heat being absorbed, one of these instant cold packs. There's a little pouch inside that you squish around and you break it and you mix it up and it gets cold. It's like magic, isn't it? It's amazing. What's going on? Well, there's a chemical reaction and it's pulling energy in from the surroundings. And so you can put it on your sprained wrist and it'll take energy out of your wrist and cool it down. A glow stick. Glow stick is a chemical reaction. You mix the two chemicals inside of it and a chemical reaction occurs that emits light. So when we see or feel any of these things, that's also evidence of a chemical reaction. We can get fooled by this, though. If we put a pot of water on the stove and boil it, we see bubbles forming, right? We have to use a little bit of common sense. What's happening here? The water is boiling. It is going from the liquid state to the gas state. Here's a picture. We've got water molecules here, and when it goes into the gas state, it's still water molecules. There's no chemical reaction occurring here. So if there's a state change involved and you're seeing gases, it's not a chemical reaction. And we can also have a chemical reaction without anything detectable with our five senses. You may not be able to see anything, but you could have a chemical reaction occurring. So which of these involves a chemical reaction? And you should be able to explain your answer. Okay, butane burning in a butane lighter. Is that a chemical reaction? Yes, it is. What would be the evidence for... Sorry, I can't write in blue on this. Blue is for the last class. It's burning. What do we observe with our senses?
Release of heat.
Release of heat.
Maybe odor.
You might smell something, and what do you see?
Physical change. Light.
There's light, right? So heat's given off and light's given off, and so that's evidence of a chemical change. How about butane evaporating out of a butane lighter? That's just a physical change, it's not a chemical reaction. Because if you flick your Bic but you don't actually light it, and just hold it like that, the butane will just escape. Is anything actually happening to the butane? No. And we don't see anything either. And you can't smell butane, it doesn't smell. So that's not a chemical reaction. How about wood burning? Yeah, that's a chemical reaction. And what sort of evidence do we see? Again, we see heat and light. Well, we don't see heat, but we feel heat. How about dry ice subliming? Subliming is what dry ice does. It goes from solid to gas. Is that a chemical reaction?
State change.
That's a state change. Just like this evaporating. If you see a word for a state change, not a chemical reaction. So it's just changing state. This goes back to the chemical physical changes. A physical change is where the particles are not being changed themselves. When dry ice sublimes, carbon dioxide molecules are still carbon dioxide molecules. When we've got butane burning, now the butane molecules are being changed into carbon dioxide and water molecules.